My name is Henry Mbaya, and I'm a lecturer in the Faculty of Theology at Stellenbosch University, and specifically teaching in the discipline of systematic theology and ecclesiology. Now, as I teach church history, the critical issue has always been, how can church history become a living experience for our students? Now, I am involved with undergraduates as well as postgraduate students. Now, in church history, the critical issue is to try to understand how history, church history, and theology has shaped our life today. And especially trying to understand aspects of history in South Africa, especially colonialism and apartheid, how these have shaped our thinking and our life as we experience today. And hence, for the students, the critical issue is how can this subject become a living experience in a way that it raises critical issues for them to be critical about the past in relation to the present. And therefore, it becomes very important that a module experience needs to integrate these critical issues in terms of its outcomes and objectives, so that the students are able to understand history and theology not only from an academic level, but also from a practical level. In other words, it's important that as they study history, they connect with the living experiences. Now, this actually does mean in two ways. One, getting the students to go to the archives where history of the past is stored and can be understood much better in terms of the anecdotes and the history of what was actually happening. So the archives, taking the students with archives has been one of them, but also taking to the historical museums where they learn about this. In that way, they're able to integrate what they have learned in these museums, but also to connect it with theory. Very important. But also an important dimension is their engagement in community. That as they go to the museum, like District 6 Museum, and they go to the archives of the Dutch Reformed Church, they are able to understand how community has been actually influenced by historical trajectories. And so it becomes very important. But also the emphasis of them talking to people about their own life experiences. In other words, it's oral history. How does oral history, the history that people have, the stories that people have, can inform an academic learning today? And so this becomes very important in terms of trying to transform the minds and the attitudes of our students today in light of church history and theology. Thank you.
Social impact is not a once-off and a one-dimensional approach. Social impact is complex and it's multifaceted. The important features or characteristics of social impact, first of all, is to apply various ways of teaching and learning to our community, not only the community, but also to informal institutions, and also formal institutions. At the workplace, can you also introduce social impact mechanism? Secondly, is to identify several interrelated support structures. If you started with the process of social impact, you have to know who are the agents in our communities that can give support to that specific issue in our communities. In doing that, you also try to identify means of practical strategies that you can follow in our communities. In essence, social impact strategies have to deal or mitigate existing constraints in a social system. But what is my understanding of social impact? Currently, it deals with social issues. What is the way forward? It must be an all-inclusive approach. A turn, social impact must not refer only to social strategies or social intervention, but must also have an economic base. Social impact is not only about to deliver social impact strategies, but must be in turn also relate to economic guidelines or principle to relieve the pressure on poverty and unemployment. Who must deal with social impact? That is a critical question. Central for me, it must be all inclusive. Not only those who are specialists in their fields, but also the local community. My understanding in dealing with social issues, you have to deal it in a comprehensive manner where all the dimensions of development must take into consideration. You find that the economic policy influence the social system. You find that national policies influence also the social system. So therefore, it's important that to understand the mechanism of social activities within a social system, you have to understand it in a much broader way. What are the benefits in dealing or engaging with social impact initiatives? First of all, is to develop networks, to develop leadership skills, share information, knowledge, skills, and advice. And the last part of this discussion is about how can service learning be of value for social impact strategies. First of all, is the important thing is the alignment of community involvement, but it's also the engagement with the institutions. And now it's not only the communities, but also people at the workplace. How can we create a platform for a feasible service learning approach? And lastly, we can say that service learning is only one form of community engagements. In conclusion, the successful implementation of social impact strategies through service learning must be a continuous, evolving, and context-based process.
So there's a growing body of evidence that student learning should happen in lecture halls as well as be situated in workplaces and communities. Considering this, we might consider that learning in and through workplaces and communities may be the driving force, especially in the preparation of teachers. As a language and literacy teacher educator involved in the Bachelor of Education programs, I became increasingly aware that the program was not sufficiently preparing literacy teachers for their work to teach reading and writing. As a response to this, I developed a service learning initiative as part of a final year language and literacy education module. This initiative was developed as part of a foundation phase BEd program, an initial teacher education program with the primary focus of certifying beginner teachers in the foundation phase. Foundation phase teachers are teachers responsible for laying the foundation for 5 to 9-year-olds literacy, mathematics, and beginning knowledge learning. This initiative provides pre-service literacy students with an opportunity to engage in an 11-week situated learning experience. Teachers of literacy have the responsibility to facilitate learning so that learners learn to read and write. By implication, these teachers need to develop competence in teaching essential literacy skills, namely phonemic awareness, phonics, word building, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. Students are afforded an opportunity to engage in a structured and integrated learning program which includes supervision and mentoring. During the 11 weeks, student teachers spend time in the actual workplace, an authentic context within which they can practice a specific high-leverage literacy practice, namely the teaching of phonics to grade 1 to 3 learners, to the point where they actually develop their competence. In doing so, both the learners and pre-service literacy students were exposed to a concrete learning experience, which is also an example of reciprocity within the service learning context. as the goal of the students and the goal of the community which they were working in were aligned. The community had a need where learners needed additional language support, and the students had a need where they had to be able to function in a space where they could develop their teaching competence. This initiative is grounded in an accommodating partnership, which was established between a primary school and the university. Eventually, what emanated from this relationship is what we refer to as a symbiotic relationship, as the initiative enabled advantages for both partners. Service learning was used as a teaching and learning strategy. The intention was to enhance students' understanding of the context whilst integrating meaningful community service, instruction, and reflection. It enriches learning and teaches civic responsibility. In addition, feedback from the students indicated that the experience increased their awareness of multiculturalism and social justice.
Hi, I'm Pamela Kierman, and I am the lecturer of brass studies in the music department, but I also convene the service learning module, which has been going on in the department from 2009.
Thanks, Pamela. I'm Felicia Lesh, and I am the head of the community music unit at the music department at Stellenbosch. So some of the projects that we partner with fall under the service learning module, and I'm the site supervisor for those students in those projects.
It's important to know that this has been going as a module since 2009, and I'm not the only lecturer in it. I have a colleague, Cara Maritz, who lectures on ethics. She's registered with the South African Ethics Association, so she's very good in teaching ethics for the community development worker. We've worked with a lot of projects over the years as our community music organizations, but in the last few years it has been reduced to 3 really effective ones, which is Jamestown Sounds, which is based in Cloudesville, and we have the Ronnie Samai Education Project, which Felicia runs, as well as the certificate program, which is our in-house program.
Yeah, it's definitely been a little bit easier to keep it contained and for the students who have transport problems. So the Ronnie Samai Music Education Project is named after its patron, Ronnie Samai, and it is for school-going youth. And so we have students coming from Gugulethu, Samora Machel, Kuils River, and surrounding areas. And they come on a Saturday, so that model follows a Saturday morning, and the service learning students make a huge contribution, and we're going to talk some more about that. And then the certificate program is based at the music department. It's a kind of bridging program, so the students are older. It's students who want to get into tertiary studies, and so this program prepares them for that. And in the last few years, we've made huge strides with the impact that the service learning students have had on this program.
And maybe I should just talk about some of the community service learning activities that students do, Felicia. Things that they do, if they study conducting, they do conducting of bands, ensembles, and orchestras. Students that are studying composition, specializing in composition, arrange works or compose works they've done in the past for the Fieldbound Band Foundation, or for Felicia's jazz band if she needs, the certificate program jazz band. They do practical and theoretical teaching. They mentor, especially, maybe Felicia will give us more insight into that. They accompany, if you're a singer or a trumpeter or a clarinetist, you can't go and play your exam on your own. You need a pianist to play with you, so they would do that aspect. If those that are involved in the recording industry record, so there's a diverse array of activities.
Morton says that service learning students must have work that is of value and of worth, and then that actually realistically contribute to society. And in our case, all our programs are about social justice. And unknowingly, the service learning students contribute enormously to social justice and allowing our students to grow under their mentorship. So we do see a lot of things taking place simultaneously with mentorship happening at the same time. And we have some really terrific success stories with all of that. And we also have the lecturers like Pamela and Karen Moritz who give input and give guidance to the students. The Ronnie Samai project, for instance, we have the recorder students, and our recorder program has grown so much because we have so many service learning students that are able to spread themselves quite widely across the beginner base of the Ronnie Samai project, thereby creating a really strong foundation for that program.
And when we think about the students, when they come in, especially those focusing on performance, they have visions of being in Carnegie Hall one day.
Absolutely.
And so when they come into the program, there's a bit of resistance initially. They kind of say, no, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? I don't want, I want to play. I just want to practice all day. And so there is resistance. And I think as the year goes by, they realize the importance of this module and the importance of interacting with the students in the certificate program and these other projects. And there is definitely transformation and social impact, which Felicia will talk about later, that takes place. And especially these days with COVID, the creative arts industries have been knocked severely. There are hardly any orchestras functioning. They're only starting now as countries get vaccinations and that. Live performance venues have come to a halt. You have a limit. I have the concert on Friday where I can only have 100 people, including the performers on stage, in that hall. And so they have to look at different ways of self-employment. And I think COVID has helped in our programs because students have moved over to online teaching.
In the Ronnie Samai project, one of the students just suddenly grew and developed in her skill, in the technical skill, because she is a technology student. But we were planning an online concert and she managed the entire broadcast, and now she's doing her master's. As a result of that, she got so much confidence from doing it. That is one of the benefits of watching the service learning students grow beyond what they thought they were capable. Especially Pamela was talking about students who are performing students who don't want to work in communities and are resentful. That actually gets students in a certificate program to be accepted in an audition panel, which is non-partial. Our certificate program students have to audition with the rest of the country. And all the service learning students who had students in the certificate program, all their students were accepted for undergraduate study. And I think that the impact of that is immeasurable, really.
Maybe it's quite important to look at it from a student view and give you some input that I thought really quite profound from one of my students, and let me read it to you. Student reflection from 2020. 2020 has been an incredibly humbling experience for me. Through service learning and as serving as a tutor for the certificate program, it has helped me to recontextualize my own musical journey within the broader scheme of things and within the broader collective experience of music.
Good day, I'm Dr. Rihanna Malchus-Innes from the Department of Chemistry and Polymer Sciences at Stellenbosch University. And I'm going to be telling you today a bit about our efforts with regards to critical service learning and how we implement this into our outreach activities. As an academic, I am a chemistry lecturer. I was able to help the education department by setting up a standardized practical manual. And this manual is now being used by the majority of the schools in the Western Cape province in South Africa and also in other provinces in South Africa as well. This is also a very good thing because now we can have standardized assessments as well. So irrespective of whether our children goes to a good school with good resources or a poorer school in a poorer area with not as many resources, they will have the same benefits, and that is our whole purpose and our goal. I spoke mostly about the grade 12s or matriculants, but we have done this practical manuals and practicals for the grade 10s, grade 11s and grade 12s throughout South Africa. So all our physical sciences students actually have to do specified chemistry pracs during grade 10, during grade 11, during grade 12. So we standardized all these practicals, and then we host our teachers' workshops in order to educate the teachers on how to do these practicals. One thing we must keep in mind is that teachers learn about pedagogy. They learn how to teach, but they don't learn actually how to design experiments and how to set up experiments. And this is where this collaboration is actually very good, because this is where we as an academic institution can help the education department. So the second part of our outreach project involves training our teachers, of course, as we have mentioned. And by training the teachers, we are hoping to create equal opportunities for all learners. We feel that all learners should be able to experience chemistry practicals. Chemistry is not just a theoretical subject, but it is also a practical subject. If a learner sees how the experiment is done, they will remember and they will learn why they observe what they have observed. And we feel in this way they will do better in the subject as well. So our teachers come from different areas across the Western Cape, and since 2013 they have come to the university every year in November for our annual teachers workshops. And every year we have a full house of teachers. Usually approximately 100 teachers come to us. Our project is also interdisciplinary because after having discussions with our colleagues in the Faculty of Education, we realized that we are training PGCE students to become physical sciences teachers, and we felt it would be a good idea to let these students not only do the practicals themselves so that they know how to do these practicals irrespective of where they teach in future, because they could be at a school which has all the resources, or they could be at a school which has no resources. So now we are teaching them how to do the practicals, and then they volunteer when the students or the teachers come, and then we assess them on the interaction with the teachers and students. So this has been a very good interdisciplinary collaboration between the Faculty of Science and the Education faculty at Stellenbosch University. The critical service learning outcomes from this specific project is that we now have optimal use of our lab space during holidays and on weekends when we open this to our community, to the public, those schools who do not have the resources. We have brought together in-service teachers with pre-service teachers, which is our university students. We've brought together academics and teachers and the education department who discuss our practicals together and decide what is best for the curriculum. We also bring together our postgraduate students with high school learners. The postgraduate students serve as mentors to these learners, showing these learners that if they want to, they can also study and become chemical scientists or scientists in general.
Service learning to me should be embedded in your teaching and research, and therefore my aim is to place emphasis on the needs of the community in general, and also the farming community around us. And I try and teach my students how we as animal scientists need to serve our community using the skills and abilities that we learn at university. So we do this through bringing awareness in our curriculum that we are teaching, in our modules that we are teaching our students, teaching them about the different types of livestock farming systems that we have in South Africa, and also the different challenges that these farmers experience. So this is not an easy thing to do in our agri-science curriculum, as most of the focus for teaching is on increasing efficiency of production and also increasing your profit margin. And this is relevant or to benefit for our commercial livestock producers. However, in our research, or in my research that I'm doing, my focus is on smallholder livestock producers, who currently falls within the lower socioeconomic and previously disadvantaged society in our country. And the approach that we use is multidisciplinary. So for the multidisciplinary approach that we follow, we include both the social sciences as well as the agri-science component to address the complex issues that our smallholder livestock farmers are facing. So for these projects, we involve many postgraduate students to study the different aspects of livestock farming and the different challenges that these farmers are incurring every day. And we also engage in conversation with the smallholder farmers on their current struggles and issues. The aim is to assist farmers with practical solutions that they can use on their farm to address these challenges that they are experiencing, and also to introduce the tools and technologies that we sort of use in our research to improve their farming practices. Ultimately, the goal is to train students who are fully rounded and aware of their social environment when they are done or when they step out into the working environment. So we hope that these students will be the ones who will continue to affect change and have an impact, a positive impact on our farming community and the community around us. Part of the tools that we are developing for smallholder livestock farmers is a record-keeping application. So the idea is to obtain knowledge from the farmers for them to contribute their perspectives and their views of practical things that we need to include in the record-keeping application. Okay, so we have a symbiotic relationship with the farmers where we also get knowledge from them, their indigenous knowledge of their farming practices and what we should include in the record-keeping app, and also sharing the knowledge that we have in terms of new modern technology that they can use on their farm.
So hashtag count me in a time of COVID. This has forced us to rethink how we frame our service learning project. So I still wanted my students to participate in the service learning project because it is tied to our module outcomes. So what we did this year was we set up a tutoring service, which meant that students did not have to work with groups of children, but they simply had to find either one child or two children whose parents could not afford extra maths lessons. As children now in South Africa, the model that we have is you attend school 3 days in 1 week, 2 days in the next week. And so there's a 50% loss of teaching and learning time. And often in the communities in which our service learning project happens, children are not doing any extra work. So students had to, on their own, find a child to support. And this is what they did. So they set up the tutoring service, they named their tutoring service, and using Instagram, we documented or journaled the journey, the apparatus, I suppose the pedagogy, the materials developed by the students. Together with a child, they also developed an online picture book to also document the learning. And this time around, students had to focus on content that teachers in the catch-up for mathematics would not do. So it is a lot more practical. There's a huge focus on practical measuring in the content. The content had to be decided very carefully with the students. Students this time also had to do a very strong baseline assessment of this is where children are at, this is how much they've lost during COVID. And this baseline they had to design themselves. So I think in terms of teaching, I think they've learnt a lot. They've had to make decisions extremely quickly. They've had to work under extreme conditions. My students had to think quite progressively about their teaching practices, the pedagogic decisions that they make, how to integrate, how to teach at a distance, how to use technology and make it accessible to children. And for them, it's the ability to be flexible and to be able to change their plan, their practice at any given moment. So the ability to be flexible, to be adaptable, to change, to understanding that within this chaos and complexity, I can still function, I can still teach. And I think that this ties in very neatly into our module outcomes into the practice that I've had to adapt as a lecturer as well. And so we've all tried to do that.